When you think of the Wild West, images of rugged cowboys, dusty saloons, and daring cattle hands may spring to mind. But lurking beneath this romanticized veneer was a harsh reality of lawlessness and violence. The Wild West was a breeding ground for some of the most notorious outlaws in history, men and women who lived by their own rules and had no qualms about using deadly force to get what they wanted. Join us as we delve into the murky world of the Wild West's deadliest outlaws, exploring the events that made them infamous and uncovering the stories behind their chilling reputations. These are the top 10 most feared outlaws of the Wild West. Number 10, Belle Starr. Born in 1848, Mary Belle Shirley grew up in Missouri during a time when the law was still trying to establish itself in the frontier. Her father was a wealthy farmer, but her mother was Cherokee, and many believe she inherited her survival skills and love of adventure from her mother. She became known as the Bandit Queen after marrying into a family of outlaws, becoming one of the most feared women in the Wild West. One of the most notable members of her gang was her brother-in-law, the infamous outlaw and former hatter Jim Reed. Her husband was killed by a rival gang, after which she took control of the gang and continued his criminal activities. Eventually, she was killed in a shootout with lawmen while attempting to escape arrest. Number 9, George Lester. George Lester is considered to be one of the most ruthless killers in the history of the Wild West. His violent career began at age 16 when he killed a man in self-defense. This led him to become a Texas Ranger, where he learned the ways of the lawman. But his career as a Texas Ranger was short-lived, as he was soon accused of killing a prisoner while intoxicated and was forced to resign. After leaving the Rangers, he turned to crime and joined forces with a notorious gang led by the killer John Wesley Hardin. Together they committed a string of robberies and murders across Texas, establishing a reputation as being one of the most feared gangs in the Wild West. Ultimately, both Lester and Hardin were killed in shootouts with law enforcement. Number 8, the James Younger Gang. Frank James was an outlaw who operated in the Midwest and Southern United States during the 1860s and 70s. He's best known for leading the James Younger Gang in a series of daring robberies and raids. Originally, the James Younger Gang consisted of 3 brothers, Frank, Jesse, and Robert Ford, along with their associates Cole and Jim Younger. Their most famous raid was the Northfield, Minnesota train robbery of 1876, which resulted in a shootout with townspeople and left several people dead. The gang was eventually disbanded due to internal conflicts and the death of several members. Frank James was killed in a shootout with police in 1882 and was buried under a false name in an unmarked grave. Jesse James was also killed in 1882 by one of his own gang members, Robert Ford, who betrayed him for a reward. The James Younger Gang left a lasting legacy in American folklore and has been romanticized in movies, books, and TV shows. Number 7, Billy the Kid. Billy the Kid was a notorious outlaw who became famous for his involvement in the Lincoln County War in New Mexico in the 1870s. Born Henry McCarty, he grew up in poverty and became involved in criminal activities at an early age. By the time he was 21, he had already killed several people and was wanted for murder in Texas. He moved to New Mexico Territory, where he became a member of the Regulators, a group of outlaws who fought against the corrupt sheriff Pat Garrett. During the Lincoln County War, Billy the Kid participated in numerous killings and robberies, earning a reputation as a ruthless killer. However, he was eventually captured and sentenced to death by hanging. In 1881, just before his execution, he was pardoned by the governor and given a noble title, William H. Bonney, Captain 3rd New Mexico Regiment Volunteers. But just 2 years later, he was shot and killed by Sheriff Pat Garrett in Fort Sumner, New Mexico. Number 6, Butch Cassidy's Wild Bunch. Butch Cassidy was a notorious train robber and bank robber who operated in the American West during the 1890s. He was born Robert Leroy Parker in 1866 in Utah and gained notoriety as the leader of a gang of outlaws known as the Wild Bunch. The Wild Bunch was a highly skilled and organized gang that pulled off daring robberies across the western United States, stealing vast amounts of gold and other valuables. They were also known for their Robin Hood-like charm, which made them popular among the general public despite their criminal activities. However, as the pressure from law enforcement increased, the gang's activities became more desperate and violent. Eventually, the entire gang was wiped out in a shootout with Bolivian soldiers while attempting to rob a train. Number 5, the Reno Brothers. The Reno Brothers were a trio of notorious outlaws who terrorized the American West in the late 19th century. The brothers, Dave, High, and Emmett Reno, were known for their skill as gunmen and their ability to evade capture by law enforcement. They were involved in a number of crimes, including train robberies, stagecoach robberies, and murders. One of their most famous exploits was the robbery of the Carson City Mint in Nevada in 1877. The brothers stole $300,000 in gold and silver coins, which at the time was worth over $6 million. They managed to escape with their loot and were never caught. However, the brothers' criminal careers came to an end in 1884 when they were killed in a shootout with law enforcement in Arizona. Number 4, Black Bart. Black Bart, whose real name was Charles Bowles, was a notorious stagecoach robber who operated in California during the late 19th century. He was known for his cunning and intelligence, as well as his knowledge of the Sierra Nevada mountains. Throughout his career, Black Bart robbed over 25 stagecoaches and was suspected in many more. He was also known for his elaborate disguises and his habit of leaving cryptic poems at the scene of his crimes. Despite his Robin Hood-esque persona, Black Bart was actually a violent criminal who was responsible for several deaths. He was eventually captured in 1883 and sentenced to 40 years in prison. However, he was released on parole in 1902 and went on to live a quiet life until his death in 1912. Number 3, John Wesley Hardin. John Wesley Hardin was a notorious outlaw and gunfighter who operated in the American West during the 19th century. He was known for his skill as a marksman and his ability to remain calm under pressure. Throughout his career, Hardin was involved in numerous shootouts and is said to have killed over 40 men. He was also known for his volatile temper and his willingness to engage in deadly feuds. Hardin was eventually captured and sentenced to 20 years in prison, but was released after serving only 5 years. He went on to live a relatively quiet life until his death in 1926. Number 2, the Younger Brothers. The Younger Brothers, Cole and Jim, were notorious outlaws who became famous for their involvement in the Northfield, Minnesota train robbery of 1876. Along with their gang, they attempted to rob a train carrying payroll for U.S. troops stationed at nearby Fort Snelling. However, the robbery went awry and resulted in a shootout with townspeople that left 7 gang members and 3 civilians dead. The brothers were able to escape, but were eventually captured and sentenced to prison. Cole Younger served nearly 25 years in prison before being paroled in 1901. Jim Younger, on the other hand, was only able to serve 10 years due to his ill health. He was released in 1887 and died of a heart attack just 2 years later. Despite their criminal activities, the Younger Brothers became folk heroes in Minnesota and are remembered as symbols of rebellion against authority. Number 1, Jesse James. Jesse James was a notorious outlaw and bank robber who operated in the American Midwest during the 19th century. He was known for his daring robberies and his ability to evade capture by law enforcement. James was also a charismatic leader who inspired a cult-like following among his gang members and supporters. He was responsible for some of the most audacious crimes in history, including the Clay County Savings Association robbery in Liberty, Missouri. However, his criminal career came to an end in 1882 when he was shot and killed by one of his own gang members, Robert Ford. Despite his violent criminal activity, James has been romanticized in popular culture and is often portrayed as a folk hero. These are just a few of the many infamous outlaws who roamed the Wild West during its heyday. What do you think of these notorious outlaws? Which one do you think is the most fascinating or terrifying? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos about the Wild West and other historical topics. Thank you for watching.